In this lesson, we are going to connect a device or an emulator so we can run our app on it. We did talk about device manager here on the right side. This is where you would create emulators and you could see the list of them here. Right now it's empty because we haven't created the first one, but here is how you can create one. And there are many different categories of emulators. So there is phone, tablet, Wear OS, which is a smartwatch, TV, and even automotive, which is for the cars, for Android Auto. But for simplicity, I'm just going to create a phone emulator. One very important thing to note is this Play Store icon. The emulators which have this icon means they come with a Google Play Store app installed and also with other Google apps installed on them. So this is handy if you want your emulator to be more similar to a real device, because then you can sign in with a Google account on that device and then you can download apps from Play Store. And it's pretty handy if your app will use Play services like Google Sign In or in-app purchases. For those, you would actually need an emulator with a Play Store icon. Just note that the images with Play Store, they do take more space and they use more RAM. So that's the downside of it, but they are more realistic. So I'm going to choose Pixel 8 and then you get a list of images. So we did choose the device type, but we didn't choose which Android OS version we want. And here you can see the list of images with all different Android versions. So you can choose, do you want baklava? Do you want tiramisu, vanilla ice cream? I personally, no, okay. But really this release name doesn't tell us anything. This is the code name. What is important is the API level. So at the top, you can see the newest API level. There is actually 36, but they don't write the API level for some reason. They just write baklava. But that's 36, and then you have 35 and so on. In general, it's good to like test the app on different API levels. I go with the latest that is released out there, which is API level 35. And here you can give a name to your emulator and you have more settings, but usually I just keep them on default. If you really want to have more storage, for example, if your app is huge or uses a lot of storage, you can increase that. Otherwise, I would just keep them simple. And here we go. This is the emulator. For the first time, it does take longer. It needs to cold boot. But emulators in Android, they have a very cool feature that they freeze the state after you close them. So since the second time when you open them, it opens immediately. So that's it. This is the emulator. And you have these hardware buttons up here. So for example, navigation buttons, power button, and screenshot, screen recording, these kind of cool features. So that was emulator. But what if I want to connect my real device? As you see, it's connected via cable already. But right now, I cannot use it in Android Studio. Android Studio doesn't recognize my device right now. Otherwise, it would list here. That's because for connecting a device to Android Studio, you need to enable developer mode. That is what lets you install your app and also debug it on the device, but also a lot of other features that are handy for developers. So I'm going to record my screen on the device and show how you can enable it. So I go to settings and scroll down to see about phone. Now this looks different in different phones. This is OnePlus, but in a Samsung, for example, you can see a bit of a different menu here. But generally somewhere at the end of the settings, you should be able to see about. And even this screen will look different, but somewhere in this screen or in a sub menu of this screen, you should be able to find build number. And when you click on it 8 times, then developer mode is enabled. Now it also prompts me the pin, but this doesn't happen on every phone. Voila, now you are a developer. So under the systems, if you scroll down, you can see developer options. And it has many different features to tweak the OS to simulate a certain thing. But we're not going to get into it. We just want it to be enabled. We need to enable one more thing, USB debugging, this one. Now Android Studio is connected to the device. Now when I go back to Android Studio, I should be able to see my OnePlus device listed here. So I'm gonna go ahead and close the emulator and switch this to the OnePlus. A very cool feature of Android Studio, this running devices section doesn't only show emulators, but it also mirrors physical devices. So if I connect my OnePlus, I will be able to see a mirror of my OnePlus screen here. And a cool thing, I can even control it using the mouse. I also type with the keyboard here. Quite handy. There you go, the device is ready. But let's also tackle two questions. So you might ask, now that I can choose between Android emulator or a device, which one should I choose? Well, a couple of things to note here. Android emulators, they are not exactly like a physical device, because emulators, they have pure Android installed on them. But devices, for example, manufacturers like Samsung or Huawei, Xiaomi, and so on, they do modify the Android OS. So they have their own modified version of Android, and they behave slightly differently. So, for example, performance of your app might be a bit different on a Samsung or on a Xiaomi device than on the emulator. And also their UX is a bit different. So it's always more accurate if you test your app on the real device. And also real device has the benefit that it has its own hardware. So it doesn't put more weight on your laptop or your PC. Emulator does use RAM from your laptop. So you do need to have more RAM on your machine. But on the other hand, emulators do give you the option to have multiple screen sizes at your fingertip. So you can create many different emulators, tablets, phone with different screen sizes, even foldables nowadays. And you can see how your app looks like in all of them. Also, another thing about emulators, they can simulate certain situations. For example, slow internet connection, which we will actually do it in this course at some point. So I think the sweet spot is to use both. Emulator for some of the use cases and real devices to test. And another question that might pop up, there are so many real devices, different manufacturers, device types, so many emulators also. Which one should you use? Well, the short answer is the one that is more similar to the devices that your users will use. For example, if you are developing an app which is mostly for tablet, of course, it's better to test it on a tablet. If your users will be using Samsung, try to test the app on a Samsung device. This is something good to know, that Samsung has the biggest market share in Android devices. But also it's very important to test your app on different screen sizes. So tablets, phones with big screens, and also phone with small screens, just to see if your users using different screen sizes will face some UX issue or layout issue. That's also something important to do. So the key takeaways of this lesson is testing on a physical device is more accurate than testing on an emulator. And developer mode is necessary to install and debug your app on a physical device. So the action item is to either connect a physical device or create an emulator.